Can I Still Catch Up to You, Kacchan? Written by Maelstrom on AO3. Read by It's_Kingston. Summary. After Midoriya Izuku was told to go take a swan dive off the roof, he feels he has no choice but to listen to Kacchan's words anymore. What was the point? There was no hope left for him anymore. He would never be able to catch up. Bakugo Katsuki, on the other hand, wishes he never said those words. Hey, just real quick, if I could interrupt here, this is Editing Kingston. This fic is a lot heavier than what I normally do, what I've normally have done. It contains graphic major character death, graphic major character suicide, so if those topics would be triggering to you, just hop on out of here. Take care of yourself. And back to your regularly scheduled content. A month ago. It was a month ago that he told those awful words. It was a month ago since he went home cold, having decided to go the long way to try and process what he was told. It was a month ago since he last very clearly remembered feeling anything. He's been numb, which stopped feeling strange to him a long while ago. The processing didn't work, clearly. Funny how that was the only clear thing he knew in his jumble of thoughts. Izuku knew that he was quirkless. He had been, his whole life. Izuku also knew that Kacchan didn't mean what he said, right? He was always so sure of that, so sure of himself, and of Kacchan. He was the strongest person he knew, but... just pray for a quirk in your next life and take a swan dive off the building. The words rung in his head, always in the center of his thoughts. He wasn't so sure. Not anymore. Kacchan was strong, nigh untouchable. And by his words, Izuku knew that the untouchable thought he was weak. The lowest of lows. Deku. Deku took a step forward, the wind blowing into his iridescent green hair, too curly to be managed. Not like he tried to manage it anymore. It fought back no matter how hard he tried. Kind of like how he fought back against Kacchan, never taking his words to heart before. He knew that something changed, though. Now, when he was called Deku, it stung. It felt like an assurance of what he was, of who he was destined to be. The lowest of lows. A mistake in the genetic coding. Quirkless. Deku. He looked down at the ground. It felt like this was the first time in his life he'd ever looked down at something. Always looking up at Kacchan, up to the teachers, up at his bullies when he was down on the ground. He even looked up to All Might. Deku wished he could have at least met All Might. Just once. But what was the point? Why meet someone who was just as untouchable, just as unable to be caught up to as Kacchan? Another step forward. This time he bent down, untying his red laces to the red shoes that indicated he was quirkless. Just yet another jab to who he always was, what he could never become. Kacchan could become a hero, but Izuku? He couldn't. He could never. He was told so. For 10 years he was told so. Pins pricked at the corners of his eyes as the green-haired boy stood up. His chest hurt, heart squeezing. He lay his shoes at the edge nearby, standing up again. His mind whirled, seeing how far the ground was. "Jump," whispered parts of his mind, only a corner telling him not to do it. He dropped his yellow school bag next to his shoes, which had only a note and his quirk analysis books in it. A note to his mother, of whom he was sorry he missed dinner tonight. Sorry that he felt he couldn't go on anymore. But most of all, he was sorry that he failed by not getting his quirk. He was a failure. He saw the way she teared up, remembered how she ran to hug him in comfort, more distraught than he was at not getting a quirk. He was more shocked than anything else. What else had he been supposed to feel at 4 years old, when his whole worldview had been turned upside down in no less than 2 minutes? Deku closed his eyes, taking a final deep breath in. He held his air for a few moments, spreading his fingers to feel the wind between them, before exhaling with a whisper. "Will I ever catch up to you, Kacchan?" No rang through his mind. No, no, no. Izuku didn't open his eyes as he leaned forward, feeling the rush of air whipping at all sides. He didn't want to see, because he didn't want to know the answer that's been thrown at him since he could form memories. Deku would never catch up to Kacchan. The fall was peaceful, hitting the ground even more so. Deku thought it would hurt, hitting the ground, but his neck snapped by the force of the concrete before his brain could process anything, giving him a quick, graceful death. It was more quick than anything his bullies, or Kacchan, had given him in life. Katsuki was bored. The teacher, Nakamura-sensei, was droning on about something Katsuki already knew. He didn't fidget around, instead zoning out, looking outside the window. Behind him, he was still expecting the familiar muttering, no matter how annoying it was. He knew it wouldn't sound, though. Deku didn't come to school today. Which was strange. Katsuki thought he saw him walking to school, as sullen as the boy looked. He didn't think anything was wrong, though, being focused on the extras that kept following him around, which was, expectedly, annoying, and ticked him off. It didn't matter, though. Those extras wouldn't even have half a chance of getting into UA. Their quirks weren't fit for it. He continued to look out the window. The voices officially nothing but background noise. It was kind of windy out. He wondered if it would rain. It was a little too sunny for that, though, the sun shining in his eyes. It kind of reminded him of Deku's smile, too bright for his own good. Katsuki hated it. It came to Katsuki Bakugo as a surprise when a shadow passed down the window, when he saw a familiar figure, someone who wasn't at school today, through the window. His ruby eyes widened, pupils constricting. Shock came thoroughly on his face, unable to feel any other emotion. Deku's face passed for only a second, yet it felt at that moment everything in the world stopped. Katsuki was staring at him, but because Deku's eyes were closed, he couldn't see him, couldn't see the shock, the fear on Katsuki's face. In fact, Deku almost looked peaceful. It was an expression that was unfamiliar to Katsuki. Extras around him acted like they didn't notice, acted like they didn't care that someone just fell, passing through the window. At the first whisper from someone trying to question what had happened, Katsuki snapped into motion. He didn't move towards the window. Instead, he went out of the classroom entirely and down the stairs, trying to get to where Deku was. His footsteps echoed in the halls, his passing figure a distraction in the door windows to those learning in classrooms. Confused whispers passed, before being silenced by the unsuspecting teachers. Katsuki's chest constricted in emotions he was unsure of how to even begin to name. He got to the area his classroom's window was at in what felt like seconds, being the first one there. Oh, Kami. Deku, right there, laying on the cold, dirty concrete, face pressed into the ground. He didn't want to describe the blood, or the way his body was broken and disfigured. It was too much. This was too much. He couldn't believe his eyes. It felt like a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. The thought slammed against his body hard, a memory he had tried to get rid of since it happened. Just pray for a quirk in your next life and take a swan dive off the building. The realization horrified him. It made him sick to his very core. He did this. He told Deku to jump. And he did. This was his fault. Emotions whirled through him, his once confident exterior crumbling as he tried to deny what he backhandedly had done. He couldn't look anymore, couldn't see the dead body that had a face like one that was simply sleeping. So Katsuki ran. He ran back into the building, up the stairs, and onto the roof, where his red shoes and yellow backpack laid. He stopped in front of the object. This wasn't a murder, then. Izuku did this to himself, because Katsuki said to do it. Katsuki slowly opened the backpack, finding only his ruined quirk analysis book, ruined by his own hand, like almost all the others before it, and a note. Katsuki dreaded, knowing what it was. He grabbed the note, though he did not dare read it. He didn't feel like he deserved to. Soon, the class came out, which in Katsuki's opinion, took way too long to do. Katsuki had already ran to the body, and now he was on the roof, and the class only just got to Izuku. Half of them looked like they didn't care, maybe even relieved that he finally did it, whilst the other half looked both sick and frightened. How could they not care? A student is dead. Deku is dead. The funeral for Deku was a quiet, closed casket one, his neck and spine being too destroyed for the morticians to have been able to make him look nice enough. Not that anyone wanted to work with a dead, quirkless body. The passing was morbid, with a grieving mother who could not bear the weight of losing her son. Her only comfort now was by her close friends, the Bakugos. They had helped plan the funeral, knowing Inko wouldn't have been able to afford half of it, especially since it was a funeral for a quirkless person, which meant unfair wages and higher prices, especially for a casket. But just as well as that, the two of them provided emotional support when Inko needed it, which was every day. Inko had no other friends, so the funeral was just the four of them. Katsuki was standing off to the side, almost hiding behind the trees, ashamed of himself. He was grieving in his own way, filled with angry outbursts and silent tears at night. Not that he'd admit to those tears, or the way his pillowcase was discolored now, some spots darker than the others. When the casket was lowered, Katsuki tried to close his eyes, but the flashes behind his eyes, of seeing him fall to his death in the window, was too much. He looked away, and down at the green grass. Green, like his hair. No, he couldn't. He looked up at the skies instead, which was a more gray-like color. He watched the clouds pass, knowing that it was going to be raining soon. Maybe even a storm, he considered, when a droplet fell from the sky as the casket was officially lowered into the ground. It was like even the sky was mourning his death. Katsuki thought, with yet another guilty twist in his stomach, of how cruel it was to think of him as a useless for years, only to know how important he had been for even the skies to start to weep for him. Even the sun, which shone so bright, was hiding behind the clouds. A sun that wouldn't seem as bright anymore. Not without his smile. After the adults had officially left their cars when the rain got too heavy, Katsuki walked up to the freshly covered grave, covered in calla lilies and chrysanthemums. Katsuki held his umbrella. He didn't say anything yet, the words getting choked up in his throat. His hand gripped onto the handle of the umbrella, the other forming a tight fist. He had so much to say, yet the words were too mixed up. It was silent, with only the rain pattering to fill the void. He blamed the rain for the wetness on his face, despite being dry under the umbrella. Katsuki's lips pursed, chest bigger as he inhaled. He certainly didn't feel as big as he tried to appear, though. He held his breath for a few seconds before speaking. I can't catch up to you anymore, can I, Izuku? Katsuki could not say he was sorry. Not yet. He did not deserve to even say the words aloud. With those words hanging in the air, Katsuki turned, leaving to his parents' car, where they were waiting for him to come back. Author's notes. Thank you all so much for reading my fic. I appreciate it a ton. I have a Discord server, should you want to join in and see what's going on, or if you're interested in any more fics of mine. The link is here. It will be in the description if you want to join Maelstrom's Discord server. Thank you for reading, and please, have a wonderful day or night. That was Can I Still Catch Up to You, Kacchan? By Maelstrom on AO3. Read by its_Kingston. Make sure you take care of yourself. I think that's everything. Goodbye.